Okay, we're just about done with chapter 2. We've got a few lessons to go, and this is another one that probably is going to be a bit of a review for you. Chapter 2, Section 5, the distributive property. You can find this on pages 96 through 98 in your red textbook. The objective for this lesson is, can you apply the distributive property to simplify expressions? Like I said a minute ago, for most of you this is going to be a bit of a review, but please take the time to watch the video completely and listen to the prompts so you know what notes to write down inside your notebooks. So we're going to start with the diagram. And see this diagram, we have a rectangle. We know that the area of a rectangle, if I want to find it, is to multiply the length times the width. In this particular rectangle, the length is x plus 2. It's not a number, it's an expression, x plus 2, and the width is 3. We can see that here. So if I want to know what the area of this rectangle is, I'm going to multiply the length, x plus 2, times the width, 3. So it would be 3 times, in parentheses, x plus 2. So what I'm going to do is break this up. So I'm going to say this part of the rectangle is x, this part of the rectangle is 2, and then we have the width of 3. If I multiply, I'm going to do 3 times x plus 3 times 2. And when I multiply 3 times x plus 2, that gives me an equivalent expression. So 3 times x plus 3 times 2 is equal to 3 times, in parentheses, x plus 2. I don't think you have to write this vocabulary word down. In fact, you don't have to write any of this down just yet. Just kind of follow along. So the distributive property tells me how to make equivalent expressions by doing the multiplication outside the parentheses. So you can see that here's a couple of examples. If I multiply b plus c in parentheses times a, that's the same as a times b plus a times c. If we use numbers, 3 times, in parentheses, 4 plus 2 is equal to 3 times 4 plus 3 times 2. We can also do the same thing with subtraction, and you see those examples down on the bottom. This is called the distributive property, one of the most important and most used properties that we're going to do in algebra this year. So take a second, copy the chart down onto your notebook, and when you're done, after you've paused this, hit play to resume the lesson. So here's a few examples. Again, I think these would be no problem for you. If I multiply 4 times y plus 3, that's going to give me 4y plus 12. Okay, now the example down below kind of make you think a little bit, but really it doesn't matter what side of the parentheses the y is on or the number on the outside. So y times y, this is important, y times y is y squared, or y to the second power, and 7 times y would be 7y. The next example is just like the previous one. We're going to get n squared minus 9n. And the last one, this time a little out of order, but it's okay, is going to be 16 minus 8n. Remember, we're multiplying everything inside parentheses by the number, the factor on the outside of the parentheses. Probably the only new thing here, again, is if you're multiplying a letter by the same letter, it's just that variable to the second power. So y times y is y squared, n times n would be n squared. Now, what happens when we have a negative? Now, again, the important thing here is to remember that the negative sign on the outside is going to change the opposite of everything on the inside. So if I multiply negative 2 times x, that's going to give me negative 2x. And negative 2 times positive 7 is going to give me negative 14. So we get negative 2x minus 14. The next one, again, we have the number negative 3y on the left-hand side, or the right-hand side of the parentheses. But again, think about this. If I do negative 3y times positive 5, that's going to give me negative 15y. And negative 3y times negative y is negative, or positive, 3y squared, because a negative times a negative makes positive. So take your time on these, because it's the first time we're doing this, so it might be a little bit kind of confusing. The last problem, if you think about the last lesson that we did, when we have that negative sign on the outside of the parentheses, that's representing the number negative 1. Remember, when we have a negative sign, it's just representing the number negative 1. So if I were to do negative 1 times 2x, that gives me negative 2x. And negative 1 times negative 11 gives me plus 11, negative 2x plus 11. So be careful with the signs, because if there's anything that's going to mess you up, it's probably going to be the signs. It's not going to be the numbers. Now let's talk about a little bit of the vocabulary that you need to know. If we have the expression negative x plus 2x plus 8. These are called terms. The numbers in front of the variables are called the coefficients. So the numbers in front of these numbers are negative 1 and 2. The coefficients are negative 1 and 2. The number without a variable is called a constant. In this case, the constant is 8. So let's take a look at this expression. We have 3x minus 4 minus 6x plus 2. Again, I don't think you need to write this down. Just follow along as we go through. There are 4 terms. The terms are 3x, negative 4, negative 6x, and 2. The coefficients are the numbers that you find in front of the variables. So the coefficients are going to be 3 and negative 6. Here's the 3, here's the negative 6. The like terms, well, that's going to be 3x and negative 6 and negative 4 and 2. These can be added together, so can negative 4 and 2. And the constants are the numbers that don't have variables. Those are going to be negative 4 and 2. Okay, now let's take a look at this. We have the 4 examples using the distributive property. Please take a second, copy these into your notebook, press the pause button if you need to, and when you're done, come on back and I'll tell you what the answers were. Hit play when you're ready. Okay, so the first one, you're going to get 2x plus 6. 2 times x plus 2 times 3 is 2x plus 6. On the second one, there's that negative 1 again. So you're going to get negative 4 plus y. Negative 4 plus y. Down below, negative 3m times m is negative 3m squared plus 15m. Negative 3m squared plus 15m. And then the last one, again, your ability to use fractions is going to be really, really important. Half of 2n would be n. Half of 6 would be 3. So the answer is just going to be n plus 3. Okay. Here's another guided practice question. Take a second, copy it down, and list the terms, the coefficients, the like terms, and the constants. Press play when you're ready to resume. Okay, on this one, the terms are negative 7y, 8, negative 6y, and 13, or negative 13. The coefficients are negative 7 and negative 6. The like terms are negative 7y and negative 6y, and 8 and negative 13. And the constants are 8 and negative 13. Good. So now we're getting on to the next section of this lesson, which is going to be combining like terms. And again, something we did in the Math 7A class earlier in 2010. So let's take a look at one. Like terms are basically just expressions that have the same, that are the same. We can add or subtract these things from each other. So some examples of like terms, 5x plus 6x, that would give me 11x. 2y minus 8 plus y plus 4. The like terms are going to be 2y plus y, which is 3y, and negative 8 plus 4, which is negative 4. So we get 3y minus 4. And on the bottom example, 25t minus 4s plus 2, well, it's kind of a trick question because none of those are like terms. So we can't add or subtract any of the terms from each other. Remember, we can't do 3y plus 4 or minus 4 equals 1y because this doesn't have a y. They have to be exactly the same, or I shouldn't say exactly the same. They have to have the same variable in order to be added or subtracted from each other. So now we're going to combine that with the distributive property, and I'll work this one out with you. So please copy the example onto your paper. First thing we're going to do is use the distributive property to multiply. So we're going to get 4 times n plus 4 times 9 minus 3 times 2 minus 3 times n. Remember, this negative 3 is negative for the 2 and for the n. That's a really important thing. Multiply each of these out, we wind up with 4n plus 36 minus 6 minus 3n. Now we have to identify the like terms. The like terms are going to be 4n minus 3n, which makes n, 36 minus 6, so we wind up with n plus 30. So we took this really big, long bunch of numbers and letters, variables, and we simplified it all the way down to n plus 30 by combining the like terms and by using the distributive property. Here's a couple of guided practice questions. Take the time to do these. As always, pause, and when you're ready, hit play to resume the lesson, and we'll go through the answers. Okay, We multiply 5 times 6 plus n. That gives us 30 plus 5n minus 2n. That means we have 3n now, plus 4. So the answer is going to be 3n plus 34. The next one, we're going to multiply 2 times 4a. That gives us 8a minus 2. But we're going to add a to that. So it's going to be 9a minus 2. And as always, if you're running into any problems, if you're not getting the answers that I'm telling you or you're seeing on the screen, take a second, talk to a friend who may be able to help you, and if they can't, come and see me, and I'll surely be there to help you. Okay, now we're going to combine everything we've done today with the distributive property and combining like terms into a little bit of geometry. So we have two rectangles. Please take a second and copy these onto your paper. Make sure you put the dimensions. And we're being asked to find the area and the perimeter of the rectangles. Now, if I want to know the area of the rectangles, I'm just going to add the sides together. So I'm going to get, for the first one, 5 plus 5 is 10, plus 3 is 16, plus 2v's, because there's a v on both sides, so it's going to be 2v plus 16. Oops. Sorry about that. So 2v plus 16. If I want to know the area, I have to multiply the length times the width. So it's going to be 5 times v plus 3, and the answer should be 5v plus 15. Okay, on the next one, excuse me, we have a rectangle that measures 9 for the width and 8 minus 12w, which is kind of a crazy number, but that's what they're telling us for the length. For the perimeter, we're going to add all the sides together. So it's going to be 9 plus 9, 18, plus 8 plus 8, which is 16. That's 34. And remember, we have negative 12w and negative 12w in two different places. So we're going to wind up with 34 minus 24w. And if we have to find the area, we're going to multiply 9 times 8 minus 12w. That gives us 72 minus 108 w's. These are crazy numbers that really don't make a lot of sense right now, but they will as we move further on into the book. And again, as always, if you have questions, please, please, please come and see me before you go on. All right, and that was another quick lesson. All right, so you got everything you need to know to be able to do the work for section 2.5, the practice sheet that goes along with this. Make sure, please, that you're doing your work on a separate sheet of paper neatly. When you're done, transfer your answers only over to the worksheet and staple your work on so you get full credit. Thanks for being part of the project. If you have any questions, come and see me, and good luck.